Do you think, is there more animosity towards automated side load trucks picking up trash with the driver operator in the truck or self checkout at grocery stores?
Ooh.
Ooh. All right. All right. So this is I guess I haven't really kept track of the numbers of podcasts because they've all been like in our tutorial phase, like trial and error. So I don't know. I don't even know what I want to call this. We can call this one. We're attempting to see what this looks like in the background. Like this isn't how it's gonna look. We're just messing with like textures and lights. I'm digging it. Like not as a permanent thing, but I think it's a good start.
Yeah, this is still in the infancy.
Yeah, and there's we actually did some light design. I should take a photo. See what it so people see what it looks like from this side. This is Menard's lighting. Actually, I'll do it this way.
You added a couple to the channels.
Yeah, there's daylight balanced and incandescent ones. So it's a mixture of like cool and warm.
Right.
Is the idea. So anyway, I wanted to start off with a funny story. So when I'm driving the garbage truck in uniform, there's a few people locally that are starting to recognize me. And like I was getting out to clean trash off of a ladder and someone's like, "Oh, love your videos." And it's like, "Cool, thanks." So I'm at a Christmas program, different town, an hour away, watching my kids do their Christmas stuff.
Right.
Guy taps me on the back and starts to shake my hand. I was like, I thought this was like a classmate that I'm like, I don't know, like I've forgotten who this person is. He's like, man, he's like, I knew it was you. He's like, I love your videos. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I've seen him. He's like, every time you're, all the different tricks to grab stuff. He's like, I've been watching all of them. And I used to pick up his trash when I worked at a different company. I as he told me where he lived, I was like, oh yeah, I remember him. He was the kind of guy that would, if he had extra, he would come out and reload
it
can.
for you.
And
Yeah.
I was like, oh dude, I was like, I bet your bill never showed an extra charge because like whenever someone would do that, he's like, I wouldn't charge extra.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, but it was just hilarious. Someone taps me on the shoulder and goes, I recognized you.
Yeah, if you want to hack for getting a second bin tipped and not getting charged, more than likely if you go out there and reload it and the driver doesn't get out of the truck, they're not going to charge you.
Well, this is where I was kind of violating some social norms because like these kids are singing their songs and we're like we're not.
Are you talking when they were singing?
Yeah, a little bit. Like it would be like in between music, like they'd switch from one grade to the other, so we'd start chatting. And then it'd carry over into the next song, and it's like, all right, I need to record this because my kid's singing. But I told him, I was like, there's this lady that lives in a cul-de-sac. She doesn't sign up for an extra tip. She didn't sign up for a walk back, but she puts a cooler out with a water and a muffin. You know the one.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've walked that can back every time because I know she's older. Like I don't know how old she is, but I was like, it's a gesture since I'm getting out of the truck anyway. And I was like, she's never paid for an extra charge, and she's never paid for walk back.
She was absorbed in an acquisition maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
And she's been doing that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
She's been doing that for.
Yeah. I was like, and that's the thing. Like, at least for me, and I assume it's common for a lot of garbage men, and it might not work for the more tech integrated companies where like every tip is recorded on camera.
Well, a contract town, they wouldn't let that.
Yeah, that wouldn't slide. But
if it's a private company and the driver has a little bit of discretion,
yeah. If there's any room for discretion of the driver, if you just small gestures, even pleases and thank yous are disarming.
Yeah.
Like there's one time I rolled up to a pile and I'd be like, this guy, just thought. And then you'd come out and be like, oh, appreciate it and whatever.
So I was running the route yesterday, and you remember the video you made last week of the two carts that were backwards with the lids open that you couldn't get to?
Yeah.
Okay, so I went round and around and around with that stop for like 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it got to the point where I put like 4 stickers on the lid.
Yeah.
Because they put them backwards, and then you got that garage.
Mm-hmm.
So then you run out of room.
Yeah.
And then you hit the garage, so you bottom out. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm to the point where I was getting out like pretty much every week.
Yeah.
You with that arm, you were able to do it a little different than how I have to do it with a Bridgeport.
Yeah.
But so the guy was out this week or yesterday, and this guy was out. I like because I know he doesn't. I know more than likely he doesn't speak English. That was kind of like my guess.
Yeah.
But obviously, like there's arrows. We have it in Spanish. So I get out, and I've just got the biggest grin on my face because I've been fighting this stuff for like 3 months. I'm like, finally, somebody's outside. I can like explain to them. So I jump out of the truck, and the guy immediately just goes, I don't speak English. I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. And then I just point to the cart. I turn it 180 degrees.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yeah, like
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. We can do that.
Yeah.
For like 3 months, I've just been like fighting it. Finally, I found somebody there, and I was like, thank God.
I know.
Explain this.
Well, that's where one of those things I've been meaning to practice, like the quick draw on the phone, where you just say, how do you say this in Spanish? And then you just play it back.
Yeah, and I should probably have that and be ready to go.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it got to the point, like, I mean, I left it one week thinking, oh, they'll call into the office. They didn't call into the office. It tagged it. I mean, it's kind of like, like, oh, why don't you do this? It's like, no, we did everything. Yeah. We went from A to Z, and, like, we're unable to get the cans turned. But.
Yeah. You'll see that in the comments where everyone's, like, giving you ideas and suggestions. You're like, dude, we've tried them all. And it's like just breaking people's habits.
Well, it's just like buckets. Like certain people respond to certain messages. So like the sticker gets a lot of people, or like if you tag it, that gets a lot of people. When you leave it, that gets pretty much everybody. But that's like the most aggressive thing to do, and then you always have to go back and get it.
And then applying an extra charge, you'd think, oh, they're going to see it on the bill. Then they'll definitely get it, and they still won't get it.
No,
it will work for some, and then some will agitate them. And I always tell people, like, we don't apply an extra charge because we're trying to get rich. We want you to, like, not do that behavior.
Yeah, extra charges are it's to discriminate against certain behaviors, such as causing us more time. Yeah, but a lot of people are set up on auto payment. A lot of people just pay their bill and like they just pay it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a garbage bill. It's like their smallest bill. They don't care.
Yeah, it's hard to. There's really no like this one strategy delivers the message to everyone. Like we'll have a video that has 10 million views and people are still gonna do behavior.
The extra charge is the best strategy because like you do get compensated for the extra work, but the truth is you just don't want to do the extra work. You want it to be what it's supposed to be, which is a simple transaction of the truck tip in the can.
Yeah, and we've said it before. It's like I would forfeit every dollar generated from an extra charge from getting out of the truck to refill it. Forfeit every one of those dollars if it meant every cart was serviceable just by the arm.
Yeah, we make money when the truck goes down the street and it tips cans and it doesn't stop. We don't make money when the truck stops and drivers are getting out loading extra garbage, even if we're charging for it. Because a $400,000 truck idling as a guy's outside reloading a can, you can't charge enough for that.
Well, and this analogy might work for some people, maybe not everywhere. But like when you see a combine, if a farmer parked the combine and started just pulling husk or ears off the stock and throwing it in the corn head, he's harvesting. And I guess you could say there's money going in, but he's losing money. He's still picking up corn, but just the act of like stopping the vehicle. So anyway,
I mean, it's like if you're driving somewhere. If you're driving somewhere, like what's the fastest way to get there? You don't stop. Every time you stop, it's going to take you that much longer to get there.
Yeah, if you get kids, you'll figure out like what road trips are like. You're like, oh, I can get there in 8 hours. I'll put 5 or 6 potty breaks in. Maybe you'll be there in 10 or 11. Anyway. All right, so that was a little warm up. Let's do a topic. Oh, do you think, is there more animosity towards automated side load trucks picking up trash with the driver operator in the truck or self-checkout at grocery stores?
Ooh. Yeah, self-checkouts at grocery stores, I mean, a lot of places have had them for a long time. They probably were introduced in our market maybe like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I think the problem with both of them is you have to understand like what the new transaction is. So running the self-checkout, I mean, the first time you do it, you always screw it up. I screwed it up. And the biggest thing for me was figuring out, like, when you put the groceries in the scale, like, you have to scan it, scale it, scan it, scale it.
Yeah.
And, like, even if you're, like, leaning against it, you, like, trip it.
Yep.
And then, like, looking things up was kind of difficult. I mean, once I figured it out, it wasn't that bad. But I would say it's probably a little more difficult to figure out a self-checkout than how to get everything in a container, set it out, and place it correctly.
Yeah,
Like a smaller learning curve.
yeah, it's getting your trash in a cart shouldn't be a puzzle. Unless you have like an excessive amount every week.
You know what's funny though? When we went automated, a lot of people were like, "How? What do we do?"
Right.
Well, they're like, "What do we do?
just
We
put
can't
your
get
stuff-
everything in the cart."
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know. The city of Omaha is automated, and everybody gets it in the cart. They figured it out.
It can be done.
It can be done.
It can be done. And there was like, with every transitioning to self checkout, the sacrifice of that is shrinkage. There's stuff that probably doesn't get scanned and goes out the door. And I also noticed that there's a lot more posts online with like a local law enforcement looking for someone. So they'll have a picture of someone going out of the store with a shopping cart loaded with groceries saying, "Hey, do you know this person?" They wanted for questioning for theft or something. I'm seeing a lot of those posts now.
Yeah.
So, and then the penalty for going automated. There were some people that are like, I will absolutely not let an automated truck service my cart.
Yeah, when we went from rear load to automatic, we knew we were going to lose customers just because people wouldn't want to comply because it is kind of strict what you have to do to be on an automatic route. But I mean, we kind of chalk that up as shrinkage. We figured, well, if 5% of our customers don't want to go automated or they don't want to do what's necessary to be automated, you just kind of have to write the 5% off and accept it.
Yeah.
And I would say we were like we were pretty forgiving with people that ultimately we just ended up losing because they didn't want to comply. It's like looking back, we probably should have just drawn a line in the sand a little deeper and said, if you're not going to do this, then you're not on the route.
Yeah.
Instead of being so fearful, like, oh, what if we lose this customer?
Yeah, because I kept saying, like, there's times where I'm like, oh, we didn't lose a customer. We just got rid of a problem. And then there's other ones where I'm like, we probably could have saved that one. Like, we were maybe too aggressive or we didn't communicate well enough. And, there's probably criticisms where it's like, oh, you guys should have done this better. And some of those could be accurate. Some of those could be legitimate criticisms. But we're a small crew. It's not like we had a whole enterprise of office and drivers and managers like helping with transition.
Well, and at our like current state right now where, everything's staffed, level, easy, it's easy to be like, oh, well, we could have done that. But at the time when we were doing that, we were juggling so many things and, trying to get it to be automatic.
Yeah.
That's like getting out of the truck and the extras. I mean, when we were setting up those routes, we were getting out of those trucks so much.
Oh, I went to physical therapy.
Right.
Like that's where I discovered what a piriformis muscle was.
Yeah.
Because I was stepping up and down, up and down, up and down. And then all of a sudden it really hurt to step up with my right leg. And that's because that, as your leg goes up, it stretches that muscle over your glute. And tucked into the glute is a little string of muscle called the piriformis. And so I went to physical therapy. I'm like, I think this is what it's related to because it's just one side, and it's always my lead side going up. And it was an easy fix, a couple sessions, and they sent you home with like stretches and workouts, and you balance out. But I forget. There was a time where I was recording it with GoPro every time I was getting out. And I think there'd be 80 times a day. And I know there's guys doing it more off of rear loads.
Yeah.
But this was a tall auto car. Auto cars are great. We were just down there for a tour. Great trucks, but they're not built for you to get in and out of it 80 to 100 or 110 times.
Well, that's why they make the standing truck.
Yeah.
They make the standing truck if you're going to be getting in and out of it a bunch.
In which case, I would say, I would not want to drive a standing truck. I would just say, just make people put it all in the cart and make it so you don't have to get out of the truck.
I think those are for front load routes more than anything.
For like getting out to open enclosures?
Well, I mean, you just got to get out and roll the dumpsters around.
Oh, right. Yeah. I still want one, though. I've ran a front load truck before. And it's not like there's, 700 dumpsters on your route because you'll pack that thing out. Usually, I never kept track of how many times I got out. But usually it was just like opening enclosures, and then dumping stuff and putting it back. It's still something I wouldn't want to mess with one of those standing trucks.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's hard on knees because you're standing and bouncing and driving at the
Well,
same
it'd be
time.
one thing if you're like standing in like a
Mhm.
comfortable cab, but you're
Yeah,
standing in a garbage truck
truck.
that's bouncing around on
Yeah,
residential streets.
yeah. I don't know if I'd want to do that. I'm sure there's an application. It that truck exists for a reason. There's an application where it applies, but I wouldn't want to do it. Anyway, but what we're talking about extra. We're talking about the difference between people being mad about self checkout and automated. And I don't know. Well, there's also this cultural meme or idea of like losing jobs, and I don't know.
Yeah,
go
I mean,
back
I'll
and
take that. I mean, you're not
go,
losing, so it's
yeah,
not so much that you're losing jobs,
yeah,
but you're just creating better jobs.
yeah.
So like
Well,
the
okay,
the
go.
whole premise is, I mean, there was one day when everybody was like out on the farm, right?
Yeah,
Everybody was like
yeah,
working to grow food.
yeah,
So like as technology progressed, we got, more efficient with our labor, less people were on the farms.
right.
And I mean, that's just, I mean, we just continue to do that every day. That's why like the economy like keeps growing. We get more for less. Um, but like the checkouts, I mean, yeah, you had one person checking out and one person rolling through.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they bring auto checkouts in, and now
Yeah,
you got 4, 6, 8
yeah,
people checking themselves out with one person scanning, or not scanning, one person like overseeing
yeah.
the process.
And I'd be cool with that scenario because I'm indifferent about self checkout. I'll use it and it exists for a reason. There's times I definitely appreciate it because you'll see like two moms that are friends from school with giant carts queuing up in front of an aisle, and you're like, dude, and you'll try to like hint that like, hey, I'm walking out with like a loaf of bread and milk.
What if you have a loaf of bread and milk? You want to self checkout?
That's what I'm saying. But before, normally the custom was, oh, that guy's got 2 items, let him go ahead.
The biggest winner of self checkout is the 10 items or less people.
Yeah, which is me because
Yeah.
it'd be like my wife does like the big bulk shop, but every once in a while it's like, oh, we're out of milk, we're out of bread.
You go get everything she forgot.
Yeah, can you run through real quick and grab something? Which is usually a big ask because it's at the end of a day. So it's like I've been in a truck since about 5 this morning, and to like drive against traffic to go into town to do grocery shopping is a huge ask.
Yeah.
Now I'll do it because it's like I get it. Like I want my kids to have milk or bread or eggs at home. So yeah, I'll do it. But my pet peeve is like when you got caught behind someone with these giant carts, and I usually double check. Like if I'm got a lot of items, I'll check and be like, oh, do they have more or less? And sometimes I'll let people go ahead. But if you got 2 women that are like just chatty, they're oblivious. They won't see it at all. And so it's like, so that's where
Well,
self.
you have people that go through a checkout just to socialize.
Yeah, it's not me.
I mean, there's people out there that like,
no, I'm task
if they
oriented.
can get human interaction and get
Oh.
somebody that'll start listening to them,
That's not me.
they're gonna start talking.
That's not me. No, I'm task oriented. You'll see me walk in. I wish I could go.
So do you like the part of the self checkout that you no longer have to have human interaction? Like
Yeah,
you can go
yeah.
through in
No,
like nobody even knew you were in the grocery store.
Oh, because like no
Not a
one's.
soul was there to
Oh.
witness it.
Oh, I'll give you a perfect example where I'm bad at small talk. Right at the start of the Russian-Ukraine war, or war, whatever they call it, security action. They don't call it a war, but whatever whatever the term is. Right at the start of that war, I went into like this. It wasn't a Hy-Vee, but it was like a Hy-Vee subsidiary, kind of an express grocery store,
Okay.
and it was just starting to snow because it was like February when they invaded. This is where I'm bad at conversation. I walk up to the aisle or the conveyor, put my items on, and she's like, "Well, the customary, like, how's it going?" And instead of giving the Midwest, "I'm doing fine," I said, "Well, I woke up to winter instead of nuclear winter, so we got that going for us." Because the idea was like Russia Ukraine could escalate,
Right.
NATO, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, at least it's not nuclear winter; it's just winter because there's snowflakes falling down. And she gave me the weirdest look that just made me go like feel real self-conscious. I'm like, well, that's not how you socialize, I guess. I thought it was funny. Anyway, so yeah, the not having the human interaction is not bad for someone like myself.
So the same part for garbage is when
Yeah.
you would rear load, you'll get people that come out and like talk to you as
Yeah.
you're like rear loading. And like, don't get me, I'm not like against talking to people. I'll talk to anybody. But like when I'm on the job, if I stop and talk to somebody, I'm gonna get done later with the job. So
Yeah.
when you rear load, it's just so tough though, because like
Yeah.
people come out, they'll be at the can, and like
Yeah.
you go out there, and I mean you're lifting their cans, and all of a sudden you start like they want to small talk and stuff,
Yeah.
and it's like, I mean even like if my best friend came out to the can, I'd maybe give him like
Yeah.
30,
Yeah.
60.
Yeah.
I mean, 90 seconds would be
Well, that and you're
a
in a
lot.
flow state. Like I always feel a
Yeah,
little.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
issues with stopping to talk
Yeah.
while you're on your job.
Like I talk a lot to my UPS guy. I think maybe 1 out of 3 interactions I'll make a comment. I'm like, I've kept enough of your time. Because I told him, I was like, oh, you weren't supposed to be here. This was yesterday. I was like, I thought you were coming Saturday because it said you were coming tomorrow instead of today. And I was going to prep a package for him. And he's like, oh, you don't have to. I enjoy our time together, or I enjoy our conversations. And I'm like, no. I owe you because I've consumed a lot of your time. So I was going to pack like some T-bone steaks and other stuff in a box for him.
Those UPS drivers that like stop and talk to customers, they get home after dark every day.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that because he's running a rural route far away from his base.
Like he's
Yeah, and so that's why I'm like, dude, like, I gotta send you. Like every once in a while, I try to bring something out, and I've been bad at that habit. But I'm aware, like, I'm consuming time from his family, so I'm kind of apologetic.
so in the rear load, it's very difficult not to talk to people, and you obviously got to like keep it short and
Yeah,
short. But in the side load, it's pretty easy because you just stay in the cab,
yeah,
and then you get to pull like past the can like a little ways.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like you're already kind of in forward direction mode to
Yeah.
like, keep going.
yeah.
Kind of like, when you're trying to get out of conversation, you're walking away.
Like you turn your feet, and you're
Yeah.
just like, okay.
Or like you grab the can and you just kind of keep the wheels
Yeah.
turning a little bit.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
customer's standing there and you like give a little wave and you're
Yeah.
like, all right, next can.
Thumbs up, wave, and in like 12 seconds, you're there and gone. Just
Yeah.
roll up, a bump, gone.
But the truth is, I do get done with my side load routes so fast that like if I roll down the window and like chat with somebody for like a few seconds,
I got a
don't
couple
mind
guy-
it at all.
Yeah, I got a couple guys I'll chat with.
As long as I'm making good time, like you
Yeah.
have time to
Yeah.
talk. But man, if you
Yeah.
get like a few people that want to come out and talk, and then you got a day with a bunch of extras.
there's a couple cool customers that are like the cool guys. Like I got one guy, he regularly has extra, and he'll hear me enter the cul-de-sac, and he'll as I'm doing the first two in the cul-de-sac, he'll start walking out with like he's like I got a little extra.
Yeah.
But our personalities are somewhat similar because he's like, I want you here and out of here. Like it's not like, hey, I'm gonna stop you so I can chit chat. It's like, how do I do this the express way? So it's like, oh, I'll tip it. He loads it. I'll tip it. He's like, appreciate it. I'm like, that's awesome, and I'm gone. Like it really doesn't add much time, and the amount of weight is usually pretty minuscule.
So back in the day, the old school guys, like
Yeah.
when I learned from Dad, and then even some of the older guys that I worked with, and I mean I'm talking like baby boomers,
Yeah.
dude, they would stop and like socialize on the route.
know.
But they had like their friends on the route.
Yeah.
You got to think that was like pre-social media. Like these guys
Yeah.
on social media. It's like back when they were like dialing without cell phones.
Oh.
So like going out on the route and like kind of
Yeah. That's
stopping at the mechanic shop. They had to talk to Pat
Oh.
down there.
Yeah.
So I'd like be with Dad and we'd be on routes, and I mean we'd stop at 15 minutes at the mechanic shop every Thursday.
Oh. Yeah.
Just hang out, socialize, talk about current events.
That's your break. Oh, I can't do that. When my wife drove, she was the same way as I am, which is just like focused on the next, like da-doon. Like you get in what I said it earlier, the flow state, and I don't know if it's on something else we posted. I think I put it in a reel, but like everyone's had flow state at some point. Maybe they're playing a video game or they're at work, but it's where you're just so focused and honed on the objective that time kind of flies by and you kind of lose track of time. And like I can usually stay in that through the whole day fairly well. And there's a couple times where, a couple extra seconds or a minute here or there is not an issue. But yeah, it's kind of dangerous because when you get snapped out of it, you start to forget steps.
Yeah, the best thing is if you can stay in it.
Yeah, because there's times where, what was it? I was tipping a can, setting it down. I think I even had it on video where I tipped it, set it down, and I was maneuvering around a trailer and bringing the arm in. But then a car came from the other side of the trailer, and I had to stop and yield to it, but I didn't finish bringing the arm in. And just that little moment snapped me out of like the pattern of like grab it, service it, check it in the monitor, make sure you see like the empty can as it goes down. You check your mirror as you set it down. You bring it in, you feel the arm hit the truck, and then you're going. But just a little interruption snapped me out of that cycle, and then I forgot to finish bringing it all in, and so it's close. But I also have a habit of always checking my mirror, just habitually to see the arm, because there's like a little light to see.
Well, you run routes long enough, you get like almost like a sixth sense of when you know something's going to be popping out.
Oh yeah, like a peripheral.
Yeah, you know when there's going to be a car coming around.
Yeah,
You're like, okay, I've created a blind spot that I haven't looked at for long enough to where that's happened before, and I've had a car pop on me.
Yeah. So, the idea of like stop everything. I guess you could stop for lunch breaks and stuff like that, but then getting back into this up the rhythm, it's no. And the other thing is, and a lot of garbage men will sympathize with this, is you don't know if their truck's going to have a breakdown that day. Like, granted, it's a dependable truck, but every vehicle could have something happen that puts you down for a couple hours. So if you socialize and you're killing time and it's you're like, well, I could have finished this 45 minutes ago, but everything's running smooth, and you have that breakdown, all of a sudden it's not hard to go to a point where you're clocking out at dark.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I did last Tuesday, and I got pulled off route for 2 hours. And it wasn't related to a truck breakdown or anything, but I got pulled off route for 2 hours. So all of a sudden, I'm 2 hours behind on this route, and I mean, there's just all sorts of problems with when you get behind.
Yeah.
But one of them's traffic.
Yeah.
So when you go through your day, you have your pattern route, and you kind of know how you're going about town, where you're at, what streets are busy. But all of a sudden, I'm 2 hours behind, so different streets are busy that I'm not used to, so I'm not acclimated to it. And it goes down to people backing out of their driveway. Like when I'm driving around, I kind of know who's leaving their house at certain times, and I kind of know what to look for. But you go at a different time, and you just have a whole new set of obstacles that you're not acclimated to.
And that Tuesday puts you next to a school.
You're all over town on Tuesday.
Yeah,
you're next to schools. You're next to the hospital.
Because there's that school that you can probably get in and out of that area by 1 o'clock. And if you're 2 hours behind, now you're getting closer to 3.
Yep.
So I don't know when that school gets out specifically. But in that 3 o'clock range, you got parents that are starting to queue up to pick kids up at school. And if you get there as school gets out, now you got both traffic picking up kids and kids walking home. And that's an entirely, like, that's almost like just go park somewhere for 15 minutes and let it pass.
So the difficulty of a side loader, like you've got like the arm, right? So you got a joystick and you've got an arm, you've got to pick up cans. Like that in and of itself, if the truck wasn't moving, pretty simple, you can figure that out pretty fast. But all of a sudden you put that machine on a truck with wheels that's rolling and moving.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're basically maneuvering a bus around town.
Yeah.
With this like joystick that has this arm that comes out. And then on top of that, you have the difficulty of like having obstacles on all the roads that you're going down. So, I mean, there's like 3 levels to it.
There's an educational term called chunking. I think it's called chunking, or maybe it's educational psychology term, but it's breaking stuff down into smaller bites. And if I was to train someone, like someone DM'd us, I think on Instagram, saying, hey, I'm about to start trash. What's your suggestion? One of them was slow is fast. The other one is, I think I kind of broke down the idea of chunking, where it's like, don't try to drive a big truck and run the arm, all the stuff at the same time. Because you're driving a vehicle that's huge in comparison in residential areas. You're trying to learn controls. And you're trying to learn where all the stops are at. So you got 3 things: navigating, driving, and operating the arm. I was like, break those 3 into separate categories. Just drive the truck. Like a really good manager or employer would just say,
go drive the truck around town.
Just drive the truck around town. And then whoever's riding with them, it's like, have them navigate an alley.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do anything. Like, just drive into an alley, drive out. Have them get good with the mirrors. Definitely use the mirrors.
Well, then when it comes to the arm, like the best place you can go with the arm is a trailer court.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
So
So,
somewhere where you just
yeah,
have nothing but cans and you're just like barely rolling one to the
yep.
next to the next.
So once you figure out how to drive the truck without doing anything else, you're not trying to find a location. You're not trying to run the arm. You're just driving. Just drive it. Just get a peripheral sense of like where your steer axle and rear axles are, because you'll feel when your rear hits a curb, leaving an alley. You're like, oh, okay, I need to go wider. Get good at that. Then, if you have a trailer park on route, just drive that. Because then you're not worried about like
Tip 100 cans and you don't even go an eighth of a mile.
yeah, yeah. So you're not worried about your route. You know, like which intersection, which street, all that stuff. None of that matters. You're just spinning circles in a trailer park. And then the last step would be, line some carts up in the yard and have them tip that. Or not that, but just navigate. Your next step would be actually like driving to specific locations to find routes or find your customers. Then put it all together. So chunk it into your 3 categories, put it all together.
Right.
And we really haven't had to do that because the guys we've brought on have driven truck or operated a truck or knew the locations, knew the stops.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's like, can you drive a truck around town? One, can you
Yeah.
operate equipment? Like, I mean, if you're familiar with joysticks, you know how to navigate a big truck around town. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that much to learn. It's
No.
just getting acclimated to the new piece of equipment.
Yeah. But you've hired people that had an expertise in 1 or 2 of those 3 categories.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't drive a truck, but they grew up in town, so they knew the stops. You know what I'm saying? And like when you brought me over, I didn't know any of your stops, but I definitely knew how to drive a truck, and I definitely knew how to run an arm. So routing was just like, instead of learning 3 things, I had to learn like 1, and even then, it wasn't that bad.
Right.
So that's how I would break down trying to get someone introduced to automation. And then if you want to have them curveball, make them route their own routes.
Yeah.
Oof. That's a task. That was a learning curve. Because even that was somewhat new to me when I came over. And I definitely knew it was new for you. So, but what we started off the idea of
Self-checkout.
Yeah. And we're like 20 minutes down a different road.
Should we take a break and come back to self-checkout?
I don't know. Do you need a break?
Yeah.
Do you need to make a call?
Yep.
Okay. I'll pause. I think I can pause. This is a new recorder. Pause. So you stepped away for a little bit, and we were discussing the animosity towards self-checkout versus automated. And I think a lot of it was tied towards this kind of Luddite idea of we're losing jobs, because machine or technology, in Luddite, in historical terms, they came up with these. What was it? Way back 1800s, the first machines that were like, I think it was either threading stuff or it was doing something with what's the term for making fabrics and threads? Textiles. In the textile industry. And people Luddites were the ones that were actually smashing these machines, like destroying them because it was taking away jobs. And so Luddite is a pejorative term. So there's the idea of like, oh, technology is replacing jobs. But I would argue, do you want like a handful of bad jobs or do you want one good job?
Right.
And the value to society.
Well, so self-checkout, so one person can take care of how many customers when they're going through doing their own versus, one person at a time if you're checking them out.
Yeah.
No different than, how many stops can you pick up with a rear load conventional garbage truck?
Right.
That's manned by 2 guys versus an automatic garbage truck with 1 guy that, can pick up 150% of what 2 guys could do. So you're trading in those 2 jobs for one, what I would call quite a bit better job.
Right. And I think there's a lot of ways to look at this, like different lenses. But if I would be more sympathetic to this idea of like technology is taking away jobs, if those 4 cashiers were making $30 an hour and you lost 3 of them and one is now making like 25 because they said, well, now the checkout's doing all the work, so we don't have to pay this person as much. That, I would say, is a detrimental effect on society. But what we've done, and you talked about this mutual friend we have, where when you first talked to him, kind of like in a consulting aspect, and you said, "Yeah, I'm paying these guys. Do you want just?"
Oh yeah, we were. I mean, when we absorbed our company, the one company when when we started to kind of employ people, I mean, it was 16 an hour, no benefits
for a driving job or
for a driving job.
Yeah.
If
And
you
what
were
was-
on the back, no CDL is probably like 14, 15.
And what did he say when you told him that?
He said that's gross.
Gross. It is, and I would agree. It
and
is
I
gross.
was like, I don't disagree. So what do I do so I don't pay people such a small wage that they can't even afford to live?
yeah.
Like
you were
what I was like, what are other companies doing?
Yeah, because you were embarrassed.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
were you kind of embarrassed to tell
Oh,
him that?
yeah.
Like, did you hesitate? Like, ooh, do I just fluff the numbers a little bit to seem
Yeah.
less embarrassing?
The reason we were talking about it was I lost a guy, so I had to fill his place, and I couldn't find anybody. And we were like advertising at like kind of current wage.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you come on our staff, we'll pay you what we're paying people that have been on our staff for a little while.
Yeah.
Which, there's that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But he's like, that's just gross. Like, I mean, you're not even paying these guys enough to live. And I'm like, that's our economy in Columbus.
Yeah.
I mean, my competitor's not paying more.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
My
about,
competitor's not paying any more. This is the market
Yeah.
rate. If you want to pick up
Yeah.
trash in Columbus, you don't even make enough money to live.
Yeah.
That's how Columbus was designed.
And so now you're paying more than your competitor, and there's a lot of stories and a lot of things we've seen as far as like, how is he running that company and you're running this one? He's paying less, and he's getting his, like, that's a whole nother tangent. We'll probably go down at another time, but it's like there are either trade-offs or shortcuts that are being made in order to get that to work.
Yeah.
And when I say shortcuts, I'm inferring like there is some legal requirements about employing garbage men that those you can cut corners.
You can save some money on payroll if you don't follow the rules.
Oh yeah. And I don't want to go down that tangent, but that's not a conversation like when we're 40 minutes into a recording, like that's not one we start now because that's like a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah, but what I'll go back to saying,
go ahead.
So like I had to hire a guy. We're paying absolutely next to nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I can't pay anymore. Like a truck picks up so many stops.
Right.
I mean, like, yeah, I guess we could start charging the customer more and pay more, but then it's like, well, then our prices aren't competitive next to what other people are charging.
Yeah.
So it's like you're really stuck. So it's like if I don't want to raise price because I've got a competitor that is the same price as me, what do I do so that way instead of paying guys 16 an hour, I can get to like market rate in other areas?
Yeah.
So in other areas, like where I was talking to this guy, they're at like 25 an hour full benefits.
Yeah.
We're at 16 no benefits.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm never going to be able to hire people at these wages.
Yeah.
So what do we do to get to 25? He's like, well, you got to send a truck out with one guy in it with an automatic arm and pick up 600 stops a day.
Yeah. And this goes to the conversation about, let's go back again to this idea of like, oh, your responsibility as a business owner creating jobs. And it's like, oh, you've lost jobs because you went automated. It's like, no. It's irresponsible to hire someone at $16 an hour when they can't afford a living wage. Because what's going to happen if someone's working a full-time job, no benefits, $16 an hour? That means that's going to require the government, they're going to be able to apply for benefits and receive them. I don't have a problem with someone being on any sort of welfare or any sort of social assistance. That does not bother me. If someone needs it, they need it. My problem is when employers subsidize their workforce by paying such low wages that you, the taxpayer, not only do you pay for, like we live in an area where it's private market, so they have to buy a subscription to get trash service. It's not taxpayer funded. So if you're paying a monthly fee for a private company to pick up your trash and they don't pay that employee a living wage, your tax dollars have to subsidize that workforce as well. People don't see it because it's so far removed, but that's true. It's like you're paying twice now for that trash service. Whereas
it's the high costs of low prices.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're going to pay it one way or another. So when people get mad at us, and you can tell I've thought about this, when people get mad at us, it's like, oh, you went automated, so now 2 guys gets replaced by one in a
It's
machine.
probably you probably cut a third of the.
Yeah.
Is it a third? You probably cut a third of the hours needed. So like traditionally, you'd have 2 guys on a truck. Now you've got 1 guy in an automatic. So say you've got 100 hours, you probably cut it down to 70 hours. You probably cut 30 hours of labor out of the component.
Yeah.
So instead of having 100 hours of low wage labor, you trade that in for 70 hours of higher wage labor. And like the best thing for a community is higher paying jobs.
Yeah.
Higher paying jobs. If everybody's a race to the bottom, how little can we pay our employees? That's not good. That's not in the interest of the public.
That's
like,
how
you want higher paying jobs.
That's how you get all these paycheck advances places popping up, because people can't afford to live, so they got to take these high interest borrowing rates because they got to get to the next paycheck. And it's like, well, it's not coming soon enough, so I got to borrow. And like that's a predatory practice. I don't want to go down that lane. But a cousin of mine left Fremont, went to California, and then when he came back, years later, he's like, "Whoa!" He's like, "This is not an improvement." He's like, "There's just a lot of indicators of things not going well. Is if they're adding more of these paycheck advances places, or like that. Now there's these like little not casinos in gas stations.
A gasino.
Gasino. Yeah, that's usually not a good metric that your society or your community is thriving. Because it's not people making 6 figures a year going to those things.
Yeah, no, but I mean, when you, as a business owner,
Yeah.
you have a lot of decisions at your disposal, and it's, what do I want to do? Do I want to have a company where, we make it so that way our employees have the tools and the resources to be very productive, which means we can pay them a commanding wage within the industry?
Yeah.
Or do I just want to, keep doing what we've been doing, use a lot of labor to get the trash picked up, and just, have low wage jobs?
Yeah. And like you're thinking about it as a business person, but as an individual.
Well, to another business owner, to anybody, and it's not just trash, it's anybody. I mean, if there's tools out there to make your employees more productive, I would double down on that any day.
Yeah.
Because the more you pay your guys, the better echelon you get.
Yeah.
The higher your expectations can be, the easier your problems become.
Yeah. But there's a couple different things I want to cover, but I want to go back to one where you're looking at it all from a business perspective, and other business owners watching will get that. But we also are talking to other customers or an audience, a wider audience. Your not animosity, your aversion to hating paying low wages. You had an aversion of that. That wasn't just business centered. I mean, was there like an emotional, like when you went to bed at night, did you think about was there a measure of pride or?
Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't even happy with like how we were set up. I mean, as a business owner, I don't really have a desire to own a business where I use this this low wage labor to like make my margin.
Right.
I don't really have a desire to own a company like that.
No.
So inadvertently, like the way it was dealt, we were a low wage employer.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm getting at from my perspective. Like when I came over, I've worked with multiple people or I've had multiple employers where some really don't give much concern about their employees outside of work. It's like, I don't care if you can pay your bills. I don't care if you have any troubles. And I don't care if any of these troubles stem from me not paying what you're entitled, or not entitled, but what you've earned. Like some people are not at all concerned about that. It does not measure. They're concerned completely with their incentive structure based off of the company. Whereas I get the impression where you went through enough of the suck of where when things started going well, you were very appreciative of it. And you recognize that when things were going well, it wasn't solely because of your actions, but of a team. So what keeps me around a place like this is when you have a greater understanding, like, oh, this is built off of building a good team. Now, you built a good team. Like, that was your decisions. But you also recognize, like, oh, let's keep Like the things that are doing well, let's make sure they're doing well.
Yeah, and I've probably told you to a certain extent, but maybe some of the other guys more. It's just the more you learn to do, the more capable you
Yeah.
become. You just twist my arm into having to like compensate you better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, honestly, twist my arm.
Yeah.
Because the more you do, the easier you make my life.
Yeah.
So like the idea of like empowering your employees so that way they can, you know.
Yeah. And that requires faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. From both sides. And that's rare.
Yeah, you kind of have to buy into it if
Yeah.
you're on the other side.
Yeah.
But you definitely want to invest in whatever you can to make it so that way your employees are as productive as they can be. And I think it's pretty rewarding, like exchange.
Yeah.
Like, because as you know, the team becomes more productive, they're getting more done, the job gets easier, and then they're getting rewarded more for it on the back end.
And this is where it's kind of counterintuitive. Like that attitude probably exists, or that mindset approach exists very common in other industries. Like you've traveled to other like you've traveled to LA or New York. You probably see that attitude exist elsewhere, where it's like I want high performing guys or like capable guys. And in garbage, that attitude doesn't really exist. It's like there's some that are meat grinders where it's like let's just keep throwing people into the fray, and if one sticks, great, we'll keep him around. But we're not going to pay him more. You know, he just happened to stick, and we'll just keep cycling him in.
Yeah. Well, part of it too is probably I started with one truck, so I was the one doing the labor for a while. And then, I mean, to this day, I still run routes, and you know, half the reason, like, you know, we will terminate accounts if accounts don't make money or if accounts like, cause too much work to the point where it's like this doesn't even make sense. Like somebody gets injured here, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
A lot of that's because I go out and do those accounts.
Yeah, you'll see it.
Like I go out and I see it, and you know, if you want a good measure to know if a business is run well or not is if the owner is out running the business and like seeing what's going on.
Yeah, and I would say that should be true. Like I worked at a place that was a large, you know, corporate entity, and the district manager, he supposedly was supposed to do ride-alongs, but I really didn't see it. And if he did, he really wasn't engaged with it. Like like he didn't have. I don't think he had a really conceptual understanding of like, oh, this route sucks because of these reasons, or this route thrives because of these reasons.
Yeah. And you're just forced to reckon with it when you're an owner going out picking up the stops that you're you know what you're billing them, you know what's going into them for costs. So you're forced to reckon with it. And I mean, there's plenty of guys out there that don't need to go out and run routes and have a full understanding of that. They're very good at what they do.
Sure. Yeah, I get that, but those are rare.
Yeah.
You know, like we've talked about Nate. Nate has a pretty good understanding about.
Yeah, he doesn't need to go ride in the truck.
He doesn't need to ride in the truck, but he's got enough sense of like things being quantified as far as what takes time, what adds weight, what does this. That's his strength, but that's rare. You don't see a lot of people that think that way.
Right.
So, I don't know. We keep saying we're starting on the idea of what's hated more, the self-checkout or automated. Then we start getting defensive about like, no, this is why we want automated. There's like, we added value. I understand it doesn't look like that.
But to circle back, so the cashiers probably were not getting raises because the cashiers were not getting any more productive.
No.
Like the cashier in 1990 was probably as productive as a cashier in 2010.
Yeah.
So if they don't get any more productive, they're not going to make any more.
Yeah.
The wages aren't going to keep up. So then it's like, well, maybe we should reduce or maybe we should increase the number of kiosks that a cashier can oversee.
Yeah.
And instead of scanning things by hand, we give them, you know, electronic devices to like monitor all this going through. And now all of a sudden they can process 4 times as many customers.
Yeah. And if they're processing 4 times as many customers, I would like to think that it's like, hey, instead of running this conveyor belt cashier at, I don't know what they could get paid. Do you think some can make $20 an hour?
I doubt it.
So let's say they're like, oh, you're at 18. We're going to move you over here. You can now run 4 self-checkouts with your little device. And all you got to do is, you know, walk over and make clearing codes. Or
it'd be really interesting, too, anybody that's done that transition that was running a conveyor belt, checking people out that now runs like multiple kiosks. Is that job better or worse?
Yeah, that sounds like a podcast guest.
I think it'd have to be a lot better, but I don't know.
Yeah. But like if they're like, hey,
I mean, you're way more productive.
that's the thing is you've increased productivity. So I would be totally fine with the self checkout if I was told like that cashier went from 18 to like 22 because instead of doing one customer every
So
like,
from customer POV,
Mhm.
it's more inconvenient to have to check yourself out. It's more inconvenient to have to put your garbage in a container,
sure,
to have to get side loaded. But from the point of view of the, employee that comes and does that for you every week, or the cashier that checks you out every week, if all of a sudden now they're making enough money and getting benefits for their family, are we sympathetic to the fact that yes, this is the necessary evil so that way these people can afford to live?
I keep going back to this. This is a recurring theme: the four invested parties. You got the company and the customer, which everyone thinks of, but then you got the actual operator or employee and the community as a whole. So it's a better service to the community if you can have a higher paying job, right? You don't have to subsidize that employee with social welfare programs. I would say you're serving the community better that way.
Yep.
So yeah, the customer might think, "Oh, I used to have all these conveniences," not realizing the trade-off to the other three involved. And it's like, "No, this is actually better. The company is safer and it's got better jobs. That's good. That's good for the community too. It's good for the operator or the cashier. If the cashier, we're assuming this hypothetical, the cashier is getting a pay bump. That's good for them. Like this is good for all four parties involved. So, and it's hard to think that way when, you know, someone's used to doing it one way forever and
Well, I mean, anybody's forced with an inconvenience, and
yeah.
then the immediate reaction is, "Oh, I
Yeah.
liked it before," and it's like, well,
Yeah.
let's look at the global picture here. Did
Yeah.
we get you liked it, but
And let's consider a lot of people are upset that they have to put trash in a cart. And like how much do you want to cater to that mentality? Cuz there's times where we had to stop the truck to finish putting trash in the cart when it would have fit. And it's like,
you got to think there's some people that are like, "Wow, I can't believe we used to just throw our garbage out on the curb."
yeah, that's where we need to have the Columbus keep Columbus beautiful. Someone from there
Yeah,
and be like, have you seen a difference? Cuz I have.
yeah.
There's neighborhoods I drive through that we went to automated that were kind of ugly, and now it's like just nice carts.
Well, I always say they were blighted on garbage day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you were a realtor wanting to sell a house, you did not want to have a showing on garbage day. It wasn't a
No.
good look for the neighborhood.
No, not when they put piles out. Anyway. Well, I think we've hammered that a lot and then went away and then came back and then went away and came back. Should we wrap that up?
Yeah.
All right. I think I got some editing to do to splice some stuff together. Cool. All right. I think it goes that